So this is the worst snake setup I have in my reptile room. I don't think there is anybody that's going to deny that. This is a very poorly set up environment for any animal. We can zoom in, we can see the snake right there. So I do have a snake in this enclosure. It is a boa, and to make matters worse, that boa is about 6 feet long and this enclosure is only 4 feet long. All in all, this enclosure deserves an F if you were to grade it on a grade scale. It is horrendous and it needs to be improved. And this was an interesting experiment for me because this animal's been in this enclosure for about 3 days. And I'll explain why she's been in this enclosure for 3 days and whether or not we're gonna keep her in here later on in the video. But when I was watching her in this video pace back and forth, surf the glass, climb up to the top of the screen, kind of fall back down, it made me realize, you know, I look at that and I'm immediately saddened by the state of the enclosure. I immediately know through my gut, through intuition, that something is not right with this. Now, it does not take an advanced reptile keeper to know that 3 feet of blank space, a water dish, and a hide is an inappropriate way to keep a snake. That is just obvious. But I wanted to test this hypothesis just to be sure. So I went out and stepped on a landmine. And what I mean by that is I took this photo and I posted it on a boa Facebook group. Now, I'm not gonna name the group and I don't want people to go find the post and find the names, but actually I was amazingly surprised at how polite and nice the feedback was. I basically posted this photo and asked for feedback on the enclosure. If you wanna read the comments that I got, you can pause the screen now. The comments are exactly as you'd expect, and they're probably already the things that are floating through your head. That enclosure is too small, not enough enrichment, not enough hides, not enough climbing opportunities, etc., etc., etc. As I said, you can look at the Facebook posts themselves. They're actually very constructive and polite. They didn't tear me apart. But the point I was trying to prove, that when people look at this enclosure, they know it's missing something. They know it's missing enrichment. And the reason I wanted to test that hypothesis by posting that question on Facebook was, I don't know the difference between this and a drawer that people use to breed boas in. It's very, very common for people to use larger rack systems to keep and breed boas. You can find videos all over the internet. There are current videos of people using those types of setups. And all you would have to do is take this enclosure, drop the ceiling at least 2 feet, maybe take out the hide, change that larger water dish for a 16-ounce deli cup, and maybe even take out the substrate and put paper down. And that would be your boa breeding environment. And even on that same Facebook group, you can find people asking for questions, asking for advice on what rack size to use, what tub size to use is appropriate for a boa. And the people in the comments are very supportive of those people as well. This is the tub I recommend. This is the best rack system. You can easily keep adult boas in these drawers. But that is what I found so interesting. This enclosure elicited a response from people that said, you need to do better. You need to add more enrichment. You need to add climbing opportunities. You need to add hides, etc., etc. Everything that you're probably thinking right now. But somehow, when we see a tub or a rack, that same response isn't automatically generated. There's something so stark about seeing empty space and absolutely nothing in an enclosure when you have all of this on top and the clear glass to see inside that really lets you know that there is an absolute lack of enrichment happening here. It is just so blatantly obvious when we look at this enclosure that nobody can deny it. But when you have a tub and a rack system that's neatly organized and symmetrical and gray behind an opaque wall, you're not actually confronted with it over and over and over again. It's actually hiding this truth behind a opaque plastic wall. This is what animals that are kept in racks are exposed to on their daily basis. This is how they are kept, with this little of enrichment. There's something about that neat organization of a rack system that sort of masks us to this. Now, I know that many people watching this video will be like, no, I know that rack systems are not ideal. They are very poor in the enrichment front. They don't allow the animal to stretch out and flourish, etc., etc., etc. But there are a lot of people that don't have that innate response. There's a lot of people that have no issue with the rack, but when they look at this, they go, what the hell is going on here? You can't keep a snake this way. And the point I'm trying to make is that we ought to start thinking of those rack and drawer systems with this. This is the image you should have in your mind when you're seeing a rack. Now, I want to speak to people who are keeping racks. If you are one of those people that are keeping in racks right now, this is not an ad hominem attack against you. This is a call to action. It is a call to, we don't want this. We can't have this in the hobby. This is not how we keep snakes. We know so much more about welfare science now at this point that this is actually inexcusable. And we know that. Everybody that commented on my post had that same sentiment. So maybe it's not feasible for you to get rid of your rack system right now. That's okay. Maybe you can start looking at reducing the number of animals in the future or adding some enrichment to the tubs themselves. There are things that we can do to move ourselves away from this. We need to move the needle away from these stark setups because it's just not appropriate for the animal. This is more appropriate for the animal. This is what a boa enclosure should look like. So this enclosure is 6 foot long, 2 feet deep, and 3 foot high, and it's from my Central American boa Winston right there. We set this enclosure back up in the fall, and there is a video on that, so if you do want to see that, you can just go back into my fall videos and take a look. This enclosure is set up to allow this animal to have mental and physical stimulation. It's as simple as that. There's tons of opportunity for exercise. You can investigate these, live plants. There's full spectrum lighting, so simulates the sun. And he is doing very well in this enclosure. Now, this enclosure is for my Brazilian rainbow boa enclosure. Now, I know there's some reflection off the glass, but I think you guys get the gist. It's very similar to this enclosure above. I did not do a video on this one because it's the same process that I used for Winston's enclosure. So if you're curious how I did this, make sure you go check out that build. And again, climbing opportunity, live plants, humid hide, pond with flowing water for her to soak, and deep substrate for her to dig in. So again, I don't expect everybody to do this. And I don't even consider this to be the gold standard. This is just where I'm at. I think eventually one day this animal could have an enclosure twice the size, or maybe more live plants, or maybe there's a different way for me to design the enclosure or to add different enrichment or puzzle feeders that can constantly enrich the life of this animal, which I think is our ultimate duty as animal keepers. We do have these animals in captivity and we really ought to provide them with the best experience possible. So if you are keeping in a rack that's relatively plain, this is how we should be thinking about it. It's not to chastise you and to throw axes at those people and to say that you are bad keepers and therefore bad people. It's not that at all. It's just saying, I think we're kind of getting tricked by the fact that racks are so organized and clean and neat and also hidden to our eye that we're not seeing the actual story. And the story is this. That's what's going on inside those racks. And for an animal like this and an animal like this, although she's now poked her head back into the enclosure, it's just not suitable. These animals need space, they need enrichment, they need physical and mental stimulation. Okay, so now you're probably wondering, or maybe you've already figured it out, why this animal is in this enclosure. Well, I was doing her enclosure. She's getting a version of one of these or one of these herself, and I needed 3 or 4, I think now 3.5 days of her being up here in this horrible, boring, cruel setup to do her enclosure, and her enclosure is right here. So very similar setup. I filmed some of the process here, which I'll just play as I'm talking, but it's very similar to how I did Winston's. We have climbing branches, we have ledges, we have full spectrum lighting, live plants, humid hide, large water dish, and she will be getting her hide that she's currently in down there. So I'm going to move her lighting from this temporary enclosure down to her real enclosure, and then we're gonna move her into her new environment. We'll mist it down first, get it nice and humid and wet, and see how she likes it. All right, well, that wraps up that build. We'll see how she enjoys her new enclosure over the next couple of days. Obviously, she's going to like it a lot more than the temporary enclosure she was in up top. Looks like she's just getting ready to curl up underneath the heat lamp, which was, I love seeing the snakes bask under the bulbs because it just tells you that they're relaxed and content. And as I've said, I cannot say it enough, this enclosure will give her the opportunity for both mental and physical enrichment, which is such a crucial aspect of keeping animals in captivity. It just cannot be said enough. exercise, both for the mind and the body, just like for you, just like for me, is crucial to a biological system. It just is. And there's just no way around that for so many different reasons. And this enclosure is going to give her that opportunity. But that begs the, well, now you can't really see because I took the lights off, but it begs the question, what is going to be going in this 4-foot enclosure? Well, that will be for my jungle carpet python, which is a lot smaller than this boa, so he's gonna fit in this enclosure just fine, at least for the next couple of years. So for this build, or not, when this guy gets moved over to that enclosure, I will film that one because I have some really interesting ideas, things that I haven't done before. Maybe I'll go this way for better light. Nope, you still can't see me. Now you guys can see me. So yes, I will be filming the jungle carpet python enclosure build just like I did the Winston one, so you guys kind of see the step-by-step process. Like I said, I have some interesting ideas that I want to try that I think are gonna make that enclosure look really, really cool. So yeah, so that will be filmed. And I guess I haven't really shown a full image of what this room is gonna look like. Now I need a wider angle lens to catch it all in here, but these are the custom reptile hat enclosures that were sent to me by Custom Reptile Habitats. They are a sponsor of the channel, so these were all sent to me free of charge, which is incredibly grateful for the support that Paul and Custom Reptile Habitats has given me over the years. They're obviously a fan of the podcast and the videos that I do, and they were happy to support the channel. So this is gonna be the background of my podcast. Finally, I've been working on this for like almost a year now. Everybody knows how busy I have been lately. So this wall is going to look very, very cool in the end. Obviously, it's sort of a corner of the enclosure. So anyway, if you're looking for more information on these enclosures or you want one yourself, you can check out the affiliate links in the YouTube description. If you do make a purchase, a commission comes back to me at no extra cost to you. And of course, that helps me support the channel by doing more videos like this, but also mainly the podcast, because that's mainly what I spend my time and money on. I think that's it for this one, guys. Thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you in the next video.